With 28,500 US troops in South Korea, what do you think would happen if there was a conflict with North Korea?
The U.S. 28,500 troops would not be nearly enough. Could even become a regional conflagration with China trying to take over Taiwan and trouble in the South China Sea.
Donald Kirk, welcome to The Wide Angle.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Don, you're the author of Korea Betrayed, Kim Dae-jung, and Sunshine. You've written extensively on South Korea. What signs do you see that America could potentially withdraw from South Korea?
Well, there's a lot of pressure for a so-called peace agreement with North Korea. North Korea would demand that the U.S. Stop joint exercises with the South Koreans, that the U.S. withdraw most, if not all, its troops, that it'll leave its bases ultimately, and will try to undermine the U.S. Republic of Korea Defense Treaty, a long-standing treaty arrangement.
What can we learn about how to deal with South Korea based on what's happened in Afghanistan?
Well, I think that we have to learn to stand by our commitments, and in this case of South Korea, by a very long-standing, strong ally. I don't think that we should be rushing into any kind of talks or deal or peace agreement with North Korea without taking the security of South Korea well into consideration. I think that certainly there's no chance of a peace treaty with North Korea. It sounds good, but the trouble is North Korea would impose conditions such as withdrawal of U.S. troops, withdrawal of U.S. bases, and to U.S.-South Korean military exercises while doing nothing on their part.
Can you give us a rundown on the current situation of America's presence in South Korea?
The U.S. has 28,500 troops in South Korea, which is way down from previous levels. It was 37 or 8,000 a few years ago, then it was 45,000, then it was 70,000. We're down to 28,500 troops, most of them concentrated in a huge base about 40 miles south of Seoul, Camp Humphreys. The question is whether or not we would really stick up for South Korea in a crunch. Certainly Biden has not shown himself as a forceful president in his performance on Afghanistan.
So Don, with 28,500 US troops in South Korea, what do you think would happen if there was a conflict with North Korea?
Well, I think that the North Koreans would not go to war with South Korea unless they had strong backing from China. A lot would depend upon China. It was the Chinese who sent in hundreds of thousands of troops during the Korean War, 1950-53, and rescued North Korea from defeat by the Americans and South Koreans. So the North Koreans are not going to do anything really unless China fully endorses it and wants to support them that way. They can brandish their missiles and threaten even nuclear warfare, but it's not going to happen without China's full support. Let's say they did go in with China's full support. The U.S. 28,500 troops would not be nearly enough. The South Koreans would have to put up a very strong defense, and we would also have to call upon our allies for defense, including this newly formed Australia, UK, US pact.
I understand that President Moon in South Korea is pushing for an official end to the Korean War, but this could lead to a withdrawal of US troops from South Korea. So why do you think he's taking this position?
Well, he wants to leave a legacy behind as the one who brought peace to the Korean Peninsula, or at least achieved a substantive step toward peace on the Korean Peninsula. So far, even though he met Kim Jong-un in 2018 at Panmunjom, he's been to Pyongyang and met Kim Jong-un there, he's gotten nowhere in getting North Korea really to bring about peace with the South, in getting North Korea to make any commitment to giving up its nuclear weapons or its missile tests, or indeed to doing anything about pulling back its hundreds of thousands of troops above the demilitarized zone, or pulling back any of its thousands of artillery pieces above the demilitarized zone. He's not done anything to bring about unity with North Korea. He believes, he hopes that a peace agreement, a peace statement would be the magic weapon that would get the ball rolling. Of course, there's no substantive proof that it would do anything. but that's his dream. He would like to step down from the presidency next year after leaving this legacy of a major step toward inter-Korean reconciliation.
Within Korean politics, South Korean politics, they're aware of the potential for a North Korean invasion. So how is he able to push that line?
Well, let's just say it should be widely known, and it is widely known among many people, but it's not widely accepted among people who really are pushing for some sort of agreement with North Korea, some sort of statement, some sort of deal. North Korea has never lived up to any deal. There's no commercial transportation across the line between the two Koreas. There's a little bit by sea. There's no mail. There's no family visits to speak of. They've had 20 odd family visits since they agreed in 2000, June 2000, to have family visits. They have them very rarely. The last family visit was in 2018. I was there before the South Koreans went across the line into North Korea to meet their long-lost North Korean relatives. Even then, the visits are a pathetic affair. They only last 4 days. They say bye-bye and never see their aging relative again. Many people are dying out and no longer have relatives on either side of the line. It's all a very sad, pathetic standoff. North Korea has shown no signs beyond statement-making, beyond demands, beyond rhetoric, beyond promises that are not fulfilled, of living up to anything.
Before you were mentioning China, the Chinese Communist Party, where are they factoring into this potential move towards a peace agreement?
Well, China has said, well, that would be a good idea. China is not really engaged in this debate. China was one of 3 signatories to the armistice signed at Panmunjom, the so-called truce village of Panmunjom, in July 1953. China, the U.S., and North Korea signed this agreement. South Korea's then president, Syngman Rhee, wanted no part of this deal. He said that such an agreement would only ratify or make permanent the division of the two Koreas. Now South Korea wants to have a new agreement, an end of war agreement, which will be a prelude to a peace treaty. South Korea wants this. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in is saying maybe China would join in. Well, you wonder how they could do any such agreement without China joining in. The Chinese have said, well, maybe that's a good idea, but they haven't strongly endorsed it. Just North Korea does not want to go to war, while very concerned about economic issues. They do test fire missiles. They just test fired one the other day. They claim it's a hypersonic missile, whatever that is. They say it's a new kind of missile. So they may occasionally, or maybe even often, test fire missiles, but they're not in any situation now to be able to go to war when they have so many deep economic problems and when they're concerned about COVID-19.
If America was to withdraw and we saw an invasion by North Korea, what would be the implications for America, do you think, and its allies, if that were to happen?
I think if the Americans were to withdraw from South Korea, and if the North Korean and Chinese, North Koreans would not invade without the Chinese. If the North Koreans and Chinese were to invade South Korea, I think we could have tremendous difficulties in the region. I think that we have millions of South Koreans who are not pro-communist, who are not in favor of North Korea taking over. I think there would be tremendous unrest. Another factor which we should mention is that Japan would take an extreme interest in this problem. The Japanese might not stand for North Korea taking over South Korea. They might give up their Article 9 of their post-war peace constitution, which prohibits them from fighting overseas. They might want to fight against the North Koreans and against the Chinese. And there would be the danger of a regional war with China trying to take over Taiwan. So we would have all those issues and possible scenarios coming into play.
And just lastly, Don, with the situation as it is, the kind of global tensions that we're seeing involving many countries, is there a general posture, do you think, the U.S. could adopt to cope with this situation better?
You know, I'm not at all sure. I think the U.S. should stand firm. I think the U.S. should stick by its allies and stick by its promises. I'm not confident in the wake of Afghanistan whether the U.S. will stand firm and will stand by its allies and will stick to its promises, or even whether the U.S. has a realistic estimate of the issues and problems involved. Certainly, we did not have a realistic estimate in Afghanistan. I wonder how realistic we are about other issues and other situations. So, but I think the U.S. should stand firm by its allies, by its friends, by the people with whom it's been aligning itself for years. I don't think that we should back down in the face of pressure or rhetoric or threats.